This does not mean that the damages are negligible. Just because there is no law against rudeness, it doesn't mean that one's rudeness does not hurt people's feelings. It is probable that the liftman was much more acutely hurt by what he regarded as a slur upon his social standing than he would have been if he had had a kick on the shins, for which he could have got legal redress. Thinking about the liftman again, he was probably a lot more hurt by the passengers' rudeness and arrogance towards him, which he considered as a slur upon his social standing or a negative remark about his social standing. He would have not been as hurt if somebody had actually kicked him, because he could have got some legal action against that person for kicking him. The pain of a kick on the shins soon passes away, but the pain of a wound to our self-respect or our vanity may poison a whole day. I can imagine that liftman, denied the relief of throwing the author of his wound out of the lift, brooding over the insult by the hour and visiting his wife in the evening as the only way of restoring his equilibrium. The poor liftman would have been extremely sad and depressed for the entire day and would have spent every hour simply waiting to go back home where he could share his pain with his wife. For there are few more catching than bad temper and bad manners. Now the writer gives us an example from a lovely play called The Rivals. There are three characters in this play. There is Sir Anthony Absolute, the father, Captain Absolute, the son, and the son's servant is Fag. And in the play there is an incident when Sir Anthony Absolute bullied Captain Absolute, and then Captain Absolute, that is the latter, went out and bullied his man Fag, whereupon Fag, the servant, went downstairs and kicked the page boy. This is an example of how rudeness causes a chain reaction. And probably the man who said "stop" to the liftman was really only getting back on his employer, who had not said good morning to him, because he himself had been henpecked at breakfast by his wife, to whom the cook had been insolent because the housemaid had answered her back. We infect the world with our ill humors. The writer is trying to imagine what could have caused the passenger to be rude to the liftman and not even say please to him. There could be a chain of rudeness behind the passenger, which is described here. Let us take another look at it. Now here is the essayist imagining what could have caused the passenger to be rude to the liftman. It was probably because the passenger's boss did not greet him or say good morning to him. And that was probably because the boss was in a bad mood because he had a nagging wife who henpecked him all the time. And the poor wife was probably irritating her husband because the cook was rude to her. And the cook was rude to her because the housemaid had back answered the cook. The essayist is trying to show us that rudeness is a chain. It transfers from one person to another. The author continues to explain why we should mind our manners. Bad manners probably do more to poison the stream of the general life than all the crimes in the calendar. For one wife who gets a black eye from an otherwise good-natured husband, there are 100 who live a life of martyrdom under the shadow of a morose temper. The author is talking about the many cases of violence which are pending in all the courts of the world. He says for every case where there is a wife who has been beaten by her husband, there are so many more people out there who cannot file a legal complaint and continue to face many sorrows because they are forced to live with a person who is ill-tempered. He says they live a life of martyrdom. They have to bear their pain by themselves without telling anyone. But all the same, the law cannot become the guardian of our private manners. No decalogue could cover the vast area of offences, and no court could administer a law which governs our social civilities, our speech, the tilt of our eyebrows, and all our moods and manners. There is no set of rules. The decalogue is a set of rules. There is no set of rules which can help us to mind our manners. But though we are bound to endorse the verdict against the liftman, we have no option. We have to say that the liftman's punishment was justified. Most of us will have a certain sympathy with him. While it is true that there is no law that compels us to say please, there is a social practice much older and much more sacred than any law which enjoins us to be civil. The essayist says that there is no law in the country or anywhere in the world that can force a person to use the word please when he requires a service. However, this social practice is much older than any law which can force us to be respectful. And the first requirement of civility is that we should acknowledge a service. Recognize when somebody is offering you a service. Please and thank you are the small change with which we pay our ways as social beings. They are the little courtesies by which we keep the machine of life oiled and running sweetly. Here, the author makes a lovely comparison. He compares our life to a machine. And what is it that keeps this machine oiled and running sweetly? It is the use of these magic words. Please, thank you, and there's another one, sorry. What do these words do? They put our intercourse upon the basis of a friendly cooperation, an easy give and take, instead on the basis of superiors dictating to inferiors. It is a very vulgar mind that would wish to command where we can have the service for asking and have it with willingness and good feeling instead of resentment. Our interactions are dependent on several factors. What are they? Friendly cooperation, easy give and take. These are the factors, and not superiors dictating to inferiors. The author says it is a vulgar mind, that is a mind full of rude and dominating thoughts. Such a person will try to force people to work for him instead of asking for a service. And what is the result? He gets the benefit, but with a lot of resentment or dislike, not with willingness and with good feeling. Here, the author would like to give us an example of what he is trying to explain about the importance of politeness. He says, I should like to feature in this connection my friend, the polite conductor. By to feature, he means to talk about, to show us, to introduce us to a polite conductor who he has come across. By this discriminating title, I do not intend to suggest or rebuke to conductors generally. He tells us that he doesn't intend to use the word polite conductor is in a disrespectful or discriminating manner. On the contrary, I am disposed to think that there are few classes of men who come through the ordeal of a very trying calling better than bus conductors do. Here and there you will meet an unpleasant specimen who regards the passengers as his natural enemies, as creatures whose chief purpose on the bus is to cheat him, and who can only be kept reasonably honest by a loud voice and an aggressive manner. But this type is rare, rarer than it used to be. The essayist is saying that most of the bus conductors nowadays are quite polite. They are willing to show respect and civility to the passengers. Sometimes we do meet a very rude kind of conductor, but otherwise, more or less, the conductors are actually people who have a very difficult job to do, and they do it quite successfully. And he gives the credit to the Underground Railway Company. I fancy the public owes much to the Underground Railway Company, which also runs the buses, for insisting on a certain standard of civility in its servants and taking care that the standard is observed. In doing this, it not only makes things pleasant for the travelling public, but performs an important social service. It is not, therefore, with any feeling of unfriendliness to conductors as a class that I pay a tribute to a particular member of that class. Once again, the author tells us that he is not trying to undermine all bus conductors. In fact, he acknowledges the service that they give to the public. But he wants to talk about one particular conductor who he has come across.